Now, Suharto in Indonesian literally means better wealth, and that's certainly what the former president of Indonesia achieved in his 32 years of rule. Wealth for himself and his family, certainly, though no one knows for sure how much. The country also prospered for the most part during his rule. We're talking about President Suharto here. He was forced to quit in 1998 amid street protests, a plunging rupiah, and allegations of corruption. Those are the facts, but the man himself is somewhat harder to detail. One biographer said the task of attempting to understand him was elusive in the extreme. Well, I'm joined now by someone who's had another go at trying to get some insight. Retnawati Abdul Ghani Knap is author of Suharto, The Life and Legacy of Indonesia's Second President, which she calls an authorized biography. Her father was a close associate of Suharto, and she joins us now from Singapore. Ms. Abdul Ghani Knap, thank you very much for joining us today. First of all, I know that you did actually spend some time with President Suharto himself writing this book. How much time did you get and how forthcoming was he?
Well, it's rather difficult because of his ill health. Usually I spend not more than half an hour for him to at least answer the question. Of course, I stayed there longer, but an hour. And on average, during the last 4 years, I visited him between 4 to 5 times a year. And it depends again on his health condition. If he's in a good health, that I can spend longer time with him. Otherwise, you have to, cut our conversation very short.
And did you feel he was completely honest with you?
I think so, because at this moment, he has no choice but to be honest with everything. This is the legacy that he wants to leave behind, isn't it?
It certainly is, and it was a fascinating life. Obviously, he's divided a lot of people, but let's very briefly go through some parts of this. I mean, he was born in just a small village, Kamosek village, 1921, June the 8th, and from the age of 0 to 4, he lived with his great-aunt. From 4 to 8, he lived with his mother. Then his dad, as you say in your book, effectively kidnapped him and took him to his aunt in a different village. That was unsettling, but actually not incredibly unusual. Did you get the impression that early stage of his life affected him later on?
Not really, Paul. To the other way around, I think it became one of his biggest achievements in understanding how difficult it is to live in an isolated village where there is no schooling for further education. So that later on became his inspiration to improve the living of the people in such condition.
As he went on then, he achieved success. He joined what was then the Dutch army just a week before his 19th birthday. He stayed with it as it became the Indonesian army after the 1945 Declaration of Independence. He married into minor royalty, more of which we can talk about later. But then, of course, October the 1st, 1965, an attempted coup against President Sukarno. It was never clear whether Suharto, or even Sukarno for that matter, was behind it. What was your view after doing your interviews?
Well, I do believe in both cases, either it is with President Sukarno or President Suharto, obviously there is always mystery in history because none of the real players want to talk the truth. My personal opinion is in both cases, both Sukarno and Suharto, they don't talk about the truth not because of their selfish interests, but it is for the unity of the country. Because if they speak up, it may create fraction.
Did you get the impression, or again, do you believe that Suharto effectively ousted Sukarno? We're talking now about March 11th, 1966 in particular, the Super Semar document, which is now lost and which power was transferred to Suharto.
Right. Well, remember, Paul, at that time, there was riots everywhere, right? And we don't have faxes yet. We don't have even communication properly. So it is not unusual for a document to be missing somewhere along the way. On the theory that Sukarno has signed the document under the gunpoint, that I completely disagree, knowing how Sukarno is very strong-minded. I mean, as a young boy, Sukarno was already in jail and out during the Dutch. So it's hard to believe that Sukarno will be willing to just sign at the gunpoint. I think Sukarno would rather die and become a martyr.
Okay, now by after 1966, effectively, then Suharto was president. You have a full chapter dedicated, which you call the foundations. These were the yayasan, the 7 foundations Suharto set up to eradicate poverty. Eventually, he was charged in July 2000 with misusing $578 million in public funds, which had been invested in those tax-free foundations. The charges were dropped in May 2006 because of his ill health. But again, did you come to the conclusion that he was guilty or not guilty of effectively laundering money through these?
I don't think he's guilty. The only problem in the foundation, it was the mystery behind it. You know, as usual, when you are wealthy and you contribute to a foundation, you don't want the people or the public know how much your real contribution is. Number one, for your own safety. Number two, you don't want to other foundation to ask and beg for your help. So this is one of the real problem in the foundation. From what my review or my research, it showed that the money is still with the State Bank up to now.
So the allegations that there are billions of dollars wealth which was secreted out of the country, hidden in overseas bank accounts, do you think that's not true?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. Because when I asked him, you know, of course, as mentioned again, it was rather difficult because he has already had 3 strokes and etc. But he smiled and he said, if somebody called me rich, yes, I'm rich. But the richness is with the foundation. It's not myself.
Okay, just a final question. I mean, to sum it up, you do say in your book that after all of his rule, 32 years of rule, the country was still divided along pretty much the same lines as when he started. On the other hand, the country was, of course, richer. Would the country have been better off or worse off without him?
Excellent question. I think, Paul, this is the reason why I want to write the book, to stop the bickering between the pro and cons. Because what we have to do is not look at the good thing, what Suharto has done, and let's not repeat the mistake that he has made. And this also apply in the 2 presidents. And if we can just, you know, stand on that point, I think Indonesia can move forward.
Ms. Abdul Ghani Kanap, it's far too short to talk about the book. Probably better to read it. Suharto, Life and Legacy of Indonesia's 2nd President. Thank you very much.